All rise. 263rd Criminal District Court is now in session. Honorable Jim Wallace presiding.
Thank you. Please be seated. Stay ready.
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to put Mr. Yanovich on the stand to testify outside the presence of the jury as to his testimony had he been permitted to testify in front of the jury for the purposes of the record. It'll be very brief.
All right. Put him on. Let's get him.
Al Yanovich.
All right, proceed, please.
State your name for the court, please. State your name for the court.
My name is Al Yanovitz.
And how are you employed, Mr. Yanovich?
Good. How? What was the question?
How are you employed?
Oh, I'm currently employed at the University of Montana, and I'm a professor there. I teach courses in acoustics and speech and hearing science, and I also do research, including forensic research, and I'm involved in community service in those areas.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach? It might be better for hearing and for both of us.
You may.
What do you have a degrees in, Mr. Yanovich?
I have degrees in acoustics and speech, hearing, and language science. That's a doctorate in acoustics and speech, language, and hearing science.
And where did you obtain your degrees?
I obtained my degrees from the University of Connecticut in 1973.
Have you testified in both federal and state cases?
Yes, numerous times.
And in what category have you testified in?
I've testified in authenticity analysis, that is to say, are the recordings purported to record what they are supposed to have been? I have done work and testified in transcription issues. I've done extensive work in voice identification, and I've also testified in numbers of cases where there's unusual acoustic digital signal processing required.
Have you testified in both federal and state cases?
Yes, I have.
And have you testified in the state of Texas?
Yes, many times.
Have you worked in conjunction with the District Attorney's Office in Harris County?
Yes, I have.
And what did you do for the District Attorney's Office in Harris County?
There was a period of over approximately 18 years, and I both consulted with the police department and assisted in many investigations involving acoustics. And whenever there is evidentiary material that has sound with it, for the Harris County District Attorney's Office, I've testified a very large number of times regarding cases in capital murder, rape issues, and other criminal behavior as well.
Yeah, were you a witness in the Cullen Davis case?
Not the Cullen Davis one, but the Campbell murders I was.
All right. And I've asked you, have I not, to take a look at certain audio tapes that have been admitted during the course of this case, have I not?
Yes, you had.
And when did this occur, do you know?
This occurred approximately the first week of June in 2017.
All right. And did you, in fact, analyze those tapes?
Yes, I did.
And what would have been your conclusion? How many tapes did you analyze, do you recall?
There were approximately 12 scenarios of tape recordings.
Right. Those are the same tapes that are in evidence in this case?
That's correct.
And do you have an opinion generally about the content of those tapes, first of all, and how they underscore the mindset of the defendant, who is charged with solicitation of capital murder, knowingly and intentionally creating circumstances that cause the death of the complainant.
Yes, I have developed that kind of an analysis. However, the questions that I addressed and reported on were, in a sense, a kind of collation of what was actually said, not that was intended, but that was actually said by the defendant.
Have you conducted research in the area of forensic and audio and forensic acoustics?
Yes, many, many times, and I make presentations on a yearly basis at approximately 10 different venues.
Do you conduct clinical research in the speech and hearing sciences?
Yes, I do.
And do you conduct forensic research in the speech and hearing sciences? Forensic research into speech and hearing sciences?
Yes.
How closely related is the speech and hearing sciences to linguistics?
Well, linguistics is one of the areas of speech, hearing, and language science. And linguistics is an area that perhaps has more propensity to incur an interpretation or apply some type of a base to the analysis that gets to intent of what is said, and I did not do that in this case.
All right. What have you done for the Houston Police Department?
Well, for the Houston Police Department, most of the work was surveillance assistance and the assistance of identifying acoustic sounds that could be useful in an investigation.
And what have you done for the Harris County District Attorney's Office?
Testimony on numerous occasions having to do with voice identification, authenticity, and other areas of acoustic forensics.
All right. Have you ever met the defendant in this case?
No, I have not. No.
All right. You've been Daubert challenged at federal court for your authenticity procedures?
Yes, that's right.
And you recall the case?
It was a case in San Antonio, equal opportunity case, and the issues had to do with were the tapes modified or edited, or were they true and accurate representations of conversations.
And what was the outcome in that case?
The essential outcome from the Daubert issue was that I testified. I was allowed to testify in that case.
All right. What did we request for your firm, Yanovich and Joe, to do in this case?
In this case, it was very clear to me that there were a lot of there was a voluminous amount of audio material, and the request was to cipher through the material without interpretation or without intent issues, and to determine the occurrences where Mr. Jacob had made a statement about what his intention was with regard to what was to happen to Meghan, essentially, and it was not something.
What was your conclusion?
Pardon?
Go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't mean
It was not a basis of reading between the lines. These were words that needed to be explicitly within the audio.
And what was your conclusion after researching and reading and listening to the tapes?
Well, after listening to them and simply collating the material, that is...
Excuse me, he asked you a simple question. What was your conclusion?
My conclusion was that there was a propensity of material, a very large amount of material that indicated that Mr. Jacob requested of the undercover officer not to harm Meghan, not to kill Meghan, and it was clearly and continuously stated that he was even to contact Jacob, that is to say the undercover officer, before he did anything to Meghan.
Did you produce a PowerPoint, sir?
Yes, I did.
And for the purposes of this hearing alone, I would mark this, please.
Well, I think the PowerPoint's already been admitted because it's not on for appellate record, at least.
Well, the appellate record has been done.
So I don't think we can go with the PowerPoint again because it's already in the record.
The PowerPoint is in the record.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The PowerPoint that you prepared is already in the record. I have nothing further.
Anything from the state?
Just a few questions, Judge.
Briefly, please.
In your conclusions, Doctor, well, let me ask you this first. You said that your job, or you were asked to note the number of occurrences of certain statements made by the defendant.
That's generally correct, yes.
Anywhere in your conclusions do you list the number of occurrences of any kind in regard to statements?
That was not placed into the conclusions. The PowerPoint speaks for itself and lists all of the conclusions.
I'm talking about your report, the conclusions in the report, your official report that you compiled in regard to your testimony and your evaluation of the recordings. Are there any number of occurrences listed in anywhere in your conclusions?
No.
And you also said that it was not your job, or you weren't asked to infer any intention in regard to statements that were made. Is that right?
That's correct.
You also said it wasn't your job to read between the lines.
Could you say that again, please?
You also said, I believe, it wasn't your job to try and read between the lines of statements.
Yes, that's correct.
I'll pass it, Mr.
Okay.
You indicated in response to the question concerning conclusions that those conclusions would have been in the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Are you asking if the conclusions were in the PowerPoint?
Correct.
The conclusions are not based upon some.
Are they in the PowerPoint?
No, not in the form you're looking for.
And if they're not in your report, not in the PowerPoint, are you in a position to discuss your conclusions in front of the jury if permitted to do so?
The conclusions can be made by viewing the PowerPoint, and it's unequivocal.
Explain that.
That is to say, there are 99 excerpted phrases from all of the audio material when Mr. Jacob indicates what is to happen to Meghan. It is unequivocally clear from those statements. Those statements are all listed and shown in the PowerPoint one at a time, the audio and the transcription. And of course, if there's disagreement in the transcription, the audio speaks for itself. It's an exact replication from the tapes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but, you know, Mr. Yanovich, some of these matters are matters that can be argued to a jury. I want to know specifically what type of evidence that you could provide to a jury that would assist them in, outside of argument, that would assist them in reaching a verdict in this case in favor of Mr. Jacob or not.
I think the material is of very high assistance because there is such a large amount of audio information that the whole corpus of that audio material becomes very cumbersome, and you lose sight of what the major themes are that are of high interest. And by collating the material the way that they were simply presented, they are simply presented in that PowerPoint, makes available to the jury a full and proper understanding of the auditory conversations that went on.
And you can do the collation.
Yes.
Ask the witness.
Just one question, Doctor. So, in your conclusions, when you state Leon Jacob was always under the impression that he and the undercover officer had made arrangements for the undercover to relocate Meghan to Pittsburgh, your testimony is that that is not a statement of the defendant's intent.
I'm sorry. I missed that.
My testimony is that when the intent,
Judge,
Restate your question.
would you agree with me the first line of your conclusions is Leon Jacob was always under the impression that he and the undercover officer had made arrangements for the undercover to relocate Meghan to Pittsburgh? That's the first line of your conclusions.
yes,
And it's your statement that is not a statement of the defendant's intent.
correct.
I'll pass it, Judge.
What was the defendant's intent?
Sorry?
What was the defendant's intent?
Well, excuse me, George. I don't care what his opinion of what the intent of the defendant was. That's the jury to make a decision. They don't need an expert to tell them what his intent was or was not. That's mainly one of the reasons why I am not going to allow this person to testify as an expert, because his expert opinion is a conclusion as to whether or not your client is guilty or not guilty. That's the jury's decision. I think we've heard enough on the record as to what this person is going to say, and I'd like to continue now with the trial.
Thank you, Mr. Yanovich.
Anything? Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Let's put your witness back on the stand and let's continue. Boy, George, I usually don't allow attorneys to swap off on the same witness.
I thought we discussed that yesterday.
No, sir. We did not. If we did, I don't recall it. Do you recall that conversation? But go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Judge. And the state has no opposition to that.
That's fine. Go right ahead.
All rise, jury.
Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We had a matter to take up outside of your presence. That's been concluded, and we're ready to continue. With that,
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Leon.
Good morning.
At the conclusion of yesterday, I was a little bit confused with some things, so I want to kind of go back a little bit and clarify.
Okay.
Now, you met Meghan in Pittsburgh, is that correct?
Yes.
How did you end up in Pittsburgh?
My ex-wife and I moved there for work.
So you were kind of there going through your divorce.
There was I filed for divorce in Pennsylvania, and my ex-wife had filed for divorce in Illinois. And I was told that I should stay in Pennsylvania during the jurisdictional hearings for the divorce.
Okay.
And we'd already given up our home, so I moved into a hotel.
And what hotel was that?
Originally, it was the Wyndham Grand, and then I moved into the Cambria Suites about 5 or 6 months later.
And that's where you met Meghan?
Yes.
She was working for the hotel.
Yes.
How long after you guys first met did you guys start your relationship? Was it love at first sight? Did you guys go on a first date?
Yeah, there was an immediate attraction. I think that, I was living there, and I became friends with some of the staff, and we would, go out and have.
Sustain.
When you guys had your first date, was there a good spark?
Yes.
Sustain.
What was your relationship like with Meghan in Pittsburgh?
It was odd.
How was it odd?
Well, I was living at the hotel, and she was an employee of the hotel, so we really couldn't commiserate or, be around each other that much in the hotel. Also, she was married at the time, and so it was difficult to spend a lot of time together outside of the of work hours. So
Sustained.
How long after you guys started dating and she was still married, did you end up moving back to Houston?
we moved back to Houston in October of 2014. So
Did you guys move together?
yes, we drove down from Pittsburgh together.
And when you were in Houston, how was the relationship then? Were you guys still happy?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Did you guys start to fight a lot?
Like any couple, we had our arguments, but as time went on, we had, more and more arguments.
What were most of those arguments about?
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Yesterday on cross-examination, you referred to family money.
Yeah.
Can you explain what family money is?
I mean, my family's pretty affluent. All of us are professionals. My sister's a surgeon. My brother's an engineer. My mom's a lawyer. I'm a doctor. We all have done, at times in our life, quite well for each other or ourselves. And, we've all helped each other out during times where somebody's had some issues and whatnot. And my mom has done quite well for herself, and she is a very...
Object to narrative.
Sustained.
So it's safe to say your family kind of looks after each other.
Yes.
Now, it was brought up also that Meghan was considered the breadwinner of the family.
It was.
Were you bringing in any income?
Yes.
What would you do for that income?
I worked at the hospital for a while, and I had another job, and I also wrote research papers with Methodist and individual pharmaceutical companies.
So you were bringing in money, plus your family was helping you out. How did
Yes.
Meghan feel about you receiving money from your family?
She resented it.
Object to speculation and relevance.
I'll sustain on relevance.
Is it an assessment that Meghan had an issue with you taking money from your family?
I'm going to object to leading.
Sustained.
What was Meghan's opinion, from your personal knowledge, of you receiving money from your family?
I'm going to object to relevance.
What's the relevance of all of this?
It's to show the relationship, Your Honor, going forward, that a lot of the fights that happened leading up to their breakup involved Meghan attacking him for his financial disability or if he receiving money from the family.
And I think we've heard ample evidence about that subject, so unless there's something different, sustain the state's objection.
Yes, Your Honor. When did you and Meghan break up?
January 12th of last year.
And that was after the assault, alleged assault, correct?
It was after the alleged assault, yes.
And that case has since been dismissed.
It has.
Why did you reach out to Tom Thurlow?
Tom Thurlow's an attorney here in town. He's also was my father's best friend, somebody that I trusted, someone I spent a lot of time with after my father had passed away. You could call him sort of like an uncle. So I didn't want to involve my mother in the legal aspect of...
I'm going to object to narrative.
It's overruled.
I didn't want to involve my mother in the legal aspect of the assault family violence because of her relationship with Meghan and obviously me. And so I went to somebody whom was a third party that I could ask some advice from and feel comfortable with that advice.
You mentioned Meghan's relationship with your mother. Was she still close to your family at this time?
She was very close with my family throughout our entire relationship. She was staying with my brother and my sister-in-law, evidently, right after we had broken up. So I'm not totally sure, or I can't answer to you how close they remained, but she felt comfortable enough to stay with my family for a couple of days after we separated.
Okay, so you break up and you reach out to Tom. What was the purpose of going to Tom?
I had received a phone call from an officer in the HPD, I think his name was by the officer Jack, asking for a statement about what occurred the night of January 12th, and he had told me that no files had been charged, or no charges had been filed. At that time, I got very concerned, and so I reached out to Tom Thurlow.
So after reaching out to Tom Thurlow, what did he do?
He told me he would look into the situation.
And did he?
Yes.
How did he help you with your situation?
Well, I don't think you can characterize it as help. I think he researched what was being done from the HPD side.
Did Tom Thurlow recommend you to go to anywhere else for help?
He didn't so much as recommend me to go anywhere else. He called me and requested that I send some information via email to his niece, Laura Thurlow, who worked for him.
And did you send an email to her?
I did.
Did she respond?
She did.
So what happened with Laura Thurlow?
With regards to the email?
Yeah, what happened after the email was sent? Did you guys meet up?
No, she called me, I think later that day, and had given me some information regarding whatever she found out.
And what was that information?
I'm going to object. It's called for hearsay.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor. What did you discover after talking to Laura?
That Meghan had, in fact, made a complaint to the Houston Police Department approximately 6 or 7 days after January 12th, and that at that time they were still investigating and deciding whether or not to file any charges.
So the complaint was filed, but no charges were filed, correct?
At that time, no.
Did you and Laura ever come up with any kind of other scheme to go about verifying what happened?
Yes.
And what was your next plan?
Ms. Thurlow had indicated to me that she had a friend on the, I think it was in Clear Lake or some other precinct where HPD was in charge, and that she would reach out to him to see if they could sort of make the situation go away.
And did she do that?
I don't know. She told me that she did, but I can't confirm or deny that.
But the assault still eventually got charged.
Yes.
So you've been in here this whole time, and you've listened to the testimony of Laura Thurlow.
I did.
She talked a lot about these 3 options you gave her.
I heard her say those, yes.
What were those 3 options that she said?
Option 1 was that she would contact Meghan, talk to her, and try to figure out a way to renegotiate our relationship, rekindling. Option 2 she talked about was convincing Meghan to go back to Pittsburgh. And option 3, in her words here, were that they would get her in a car and sedate her and bring her somewhere so I could talk to her. I don't know where she came up with that, but that was what she testified to.
That wasn't you that offered the syringe?
Absolutely not.
When you first approached Laura, what did you explain to her about the situation?
She asked me a bunch of personal questions about, our relationship and, how I met Meghan, sort of like what you've done here, and up from the time we met to the time that we broke up and what occurred.
So Laura had a pretty good grasp of your relationship, in your opinion, with Meghan.
She knew intimate details about our relationship, yes.
So after you had that first meeting with Laura, she told you she was going to go to her guy, as she puts it, to help take care of these charges, and they eventually get charged. What happens? What else did you and Laura go forward and do?
Well, the charges, I wasn't aware of the charges until I got arrested. So in the meantime,
Not responsive.
Sustained.
yes, sir, I apologize.
Yes, Your Honor. Before charges got filed, and after you first met with Laura, what did you guys do next? Did you guys ever visit anywhere?
Yes. Ms. Thurlow and I, she visited the hotel where Meghan worked at.
Were you with her?
I was, but I didn't go into the hotel. I was parked across the street, I think.
When Laura returned from the hotel into the car, did you learn anything?
Yeah, I was told, she told me that
Judge, I'm going to object to hearsay.
Sustained.
I learned that,
Judge, I'm going to object to hearsay.
Sustained. Restate the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Did your plans change after she returned from the hotel?
yes, we decided to take a break and regroup, and we went and had a bite to eat at a restaurant or a bar.
Without saying what she said, did you guys discuss what happened in the hotel?
Yes.
Were you of the impression that she talked to Meghan?
No.
So after you guys had a couple drinks at the bar, did you guys come back to like the next day, or did you guys go back to the hotel?
I don't remember exactly what we did right afterwards, but it had gotten quite late, and she asked me to give her a ride back to her parents' house for a dinner.
At any point in time during your conversations with Laura, did you mention that you wanted Meghan hurt?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever reference to her being killed?
No.
Did Laura continue to help you out, or did she kind of disappear?
At first, she continued to help me out, or, she pretended to, I think, do a lot of stuff. But then she became less and less reliable, specifically, leading up to when she introduced me to Motaz, Aziz.
So she introduced you to Motaz.
Well, he called me on her request. She was present when she called me the first time. I could hear her voice in the background.
So she gave Motaz your contact.
Yes.
You didn't reach out to him.
I had no idea who he was.
After that conversation, who did you believe Motaz was?
I believed he was somebody who was a private investigator, essentially, and ex-military guy who would come back stateside and sort of was working as his own, for himself as a private investigator. In fact, Laura had told me that he had done some work for...
Responsive and narrative.
Sustained.
After he told you he was a private investigator, did you believe him?
Yes.
Did he ever quote you some kind of fee to help you out?
During our initial conversation, no.
But he informed you he was a private investigator. Did you approach him about helping you?
We made a time later that evening to meet at a restaurant.
And where did you guys go to meet?
Del Frisco's over at the Galleria.
And that was the same day that he first contacted you?
Yes, it was. I think it was. I'm almost, I can't be positive. It could have been.
It was soon. It was
It
close to
was
time.
within 24 hours. Yes.
Okay, so what happened at Del Frisco? What you guys talk about?
May we approach, please?
You were of the impression that Meghan wanted to go back to Pittsburgh. Why were you of that impression?
I'm going to object to ask and answer.
This will be getting into things that were not covered yesterday, Your Honor.
You may answer.
Motaz Aziz had told me, or Zach.
I'm now going to object to hearsay.
I forgot. I apologize. How do I answer that question?
What was stopping Meghan from going back to Pittsburgh?
Money.
And you were told that by the private investigator you hired.
Yes.
Was there a suggestion made that you could offer her money to help get her out of town?
It wasn't a payment as a bribe. It was to help cover the cost of moving out of town, and to help give her some, cushion when she went back to Pittsburgh. So it wasn't like I was bribing anybody to go out of town, if that's what you're indicating. It was support.
Was there ever any kind of plane tickets bought?
I was showing receipts for a plane ticket, a one-way plane ticket back to Pittsburgh, yes.
Were you allowed to keep that receipt?
I don't remember.
And how was he going to know that she got on that plane to go to Pittsburgh?
I think she was scheduled to leave the same morning as the protection order hearing.
Did he take any steps? Was he going to personally witness her get on that plane?
I don't believe so.
Did he ever come back and approach you and ask for more money?
Not after that regarding Meghan. I had already given him significant amounts of funds for, what we had, well, at least he told me had been arranged.
Did you ever tell Motaz that you wanted Meghan dead?
No.
Did Motaz ever speak with Matt McDaniel?
I object to ask and answer.
Sustain.
Did Valerie ever have a private conversation with Motaz?
Several.
And do you know if those conversations were ever in regards to Mac?
I believe that they were.
Now, throughout the course of this trial and on Officer Duran's examination, we've played all the audio tapes, and you've got to listen to all those audio tapes.
I have.
At this time, I want to play through some of those clips of some of those audio tapes that I think we need to have you comment on.
Okay.
We'll start with the Wiretap Recording number 1. This conversation happened March 7th, 2017. Is that your recollection? This is the very first conversation.
I'm assuming that that's the right date, yeah.
Tell us where it happened. Is this the Olive Garden?
This is not the Olive Garden, Your Honor. This is going to be the phone call between Motaz and Zach. I'm sorry, Zach and Leon.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about, yeah.
This is Officer Duran with the Houston Police Department, Major Offense Division Career Criminal Squad. Today's date is March 7, 2017. We are currently located at Jake's Bank, located off of the Beltway in Westheimer. We're working on a high investigation. A cooperating informant is going to assist us in making calls to suspect Leon Jacob. Set up a meeting for him to meet up with myself, Officer Duran, who will be working in an undercover capacity.
Prior
prior to this conversation, did you and Motaz discuss having a third party come to help?
Yes.
Why did you need to have a third party come help?
I was under the impression that it was necessary because of the closeness of the relationship that Motaz had gotten to Valerie and I, and also the fact that he had been in contact several times with Meghan, and he felt uncomfortable continuing speaking to her after she didn't leave, per their agreement, as he told me that's what their agreement was.
And were you under the impression this third party, what was your impression of who this third party was going to be?
I really wasn't sure what he was. He was supposed to be, again, ex-military, Navy SEAL kind of guy who was also good at negotiating and interrogating. That was the whole shtick, if you will. I was told both of them were.
Your Honor, may we have the Mr. Jacob pull the mic a little closer and speak a little louder?
I'll just move a little closer.
Let's continue, please.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing, Blake?
Pretty good. Hey, listen, I'm gonna set up a meeting with you tomorrow so we can finish this, okay?
Okay.
All right. Can you meet me tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll clear my schedule, no problem.
Okay. And I'm gonna bring with me the Navy SEAL guy because he wants, so we can get this done. I want to really finish so we can be good, okay?
Okay, you're gonna take care of all problems, right?
All right. We're gonna go to a restaurant though, right?
Now, at this time, have you ever spoken of a second problem?
Valerie had spoken to Motaz or Zach about.
The gentleman object is calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
So Valerie spoke with Motaz, but don't go into what she said.
Yes.
And you and Valerie also spoke.
Yes.
And she would have told you what was said to Motaz.
Yes.
Whatever you want, but we're taking care of all problems.
What problems?
Both of the individuals we're talking about.
Okay.
No, you are.
So, what was your impression of what Valerie wanted to happen at this time? So, sorry, what was your impression of what Valerie McDaniel wanted to have happen to Mac McDaniel at the time of this conversation?
My impression was that she had requested that he be spoken to quite forcefully about leaving her alone regarding me and our living situation. I don't know the details of what they discussed regarding what she wanted. I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't present for those conversations, and she was very vague when she told me what they spoke about.
Understood.
Her and him.
Oh, you mean Valerie's? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, my issue and Valerie's issue.
Okay.
So it appears there that Motaz was aware of Valerie's issue.
I would suspect.
Is that calls for speculation?
Sustained.
Are they both going to be here?
Yeah. We'll talk about it tomorrow. He'll take care of them.
You'll take care of both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Valerie wants to talk to you. Good.
I thought Valerie wanted them to stop talking to her because he raped her.
Good what?
You told me that she told me that Valerie doesn't want to talk to her, right?
No.
So Valerie's problem was to try and get Mac McDaniel to stop talking to her.
Yes, he had been sending a lot of harassing emails and texts and calling incessantly.
Valerie wants to talk to you about what she wants to do with her ex-husband.
Okay, that's good. All right, just bring it with you tomorrow.
Okay, but Meghan will be taken care of too this week?
Yeah.
What was supposed to happen with Meghan that week?
She was supposed to go back to Pittsburgh, as I've maintained.
Oh, that was the plane ticket week.
No, this happened after the plane ticket week. They were going to come up with some plan to, I guess, coerce her or make her make good on the promise that she had made that she was leaving.
All right, good.
We'll talk tomorrow, all right? Just make sure that we meet tomorrow, right?
Listen, I need my computer back.
Okay, I'll get you the computer too.
I mean, the computer I need back, like, ASAP, because I need...
Unless the computer has some issue. I mean,
No, Your Honor.
we've heard all of this, so let's get to the meat of what it is you're trying to get to.
Yes, Your Honor. So further along in that conversation, you start to discuss that you have court coming up in the morning. This is around timestamp 3:36.
He can take care of this?
Yes, that's his job. Let's talk about it later, all right? Bye.
No, we'll talk about it then. And so, what time where do you want to meet?
I told you I'll tell you tomorrow, okay?
Okay, so everything is going to be okay?
Everything will be fine.
All right, because I need her to leave, and then things are okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So you just really needed her to get out of Houston. And what would be okay by her leaving town?
She wouldn't be testifying or involved in the assault with violence or stalking charges that I had, and they would be dropped.
So after that conversation, you guys then, in fact, met up at Olive Garden. Is that correct?
Yes.
I will now go to a couple of excerpts from the Olive Garden tape. I'm not going to play the entire thing in its entirety at all. But you were of the impression that the person you were meeting, the third party, was a Navy SEAL.
Until he informed me that he was, I think he said he was a second petty officer with the Army, I think is what he said.
So while at Olive Garden, the undercover officer asks you, what do you want to have happen? And this is the recording that happens afterwards. Can you understand what you say there? I know the quality is a little bit rough.
To be honest with you, I really can't.
Would it help to listen to it one more time?
Sure. I think I said I just want her to leave. I just want her to go.
And what was the undercover officer's response to that when you say, I just want her to leave? Does he agree?
You'd have to play it for me. I don't. There's a lot of stuff we've listened to. I'm not sure what everybody said exactly. He says something like, or
So he understands what you're asking.
Yes.
So for that first agreement, you say, I just want her to leave. And he responds,
Yes.
And then shortly after that, you guys begin to discuss even farther into the details about what's going to happen. And then you say, I need to leave. Are you able to make out what you say there?
I just want her to leave.
After you say that to the undercover officer, you then try to figure out how he's going to assess it, and this conversation happens.
Can you repeat the statement?
Yeah, after you inform the officer that you just want her to leave. You then try and figure out what the step's going to be.
Objection leading.
Sustained.
While at the Olive Garden, you had this conversation following.
What are you going to do? Well, that's the problem. When you say leave, I'm not exactly sure what you want. I mean, what I've done in the past might not be what you want. What have you done in the past? I've hurt people. I don't want to hurt her. But I want her to go. I want her to leave town, go back to Pittsburgh. That's what I want. And not come back.
From listening to that, what is your idea of what you're requesting to have happen?
For her to leave Houston, go back to Pittsburgh, and not come back.
And what do you mean by ever, and not come back ever?
I think it was a reactionary ever. You know, I didn't mean for her to stay there and never ever travel anywhere, but just to not come back and, I guess, bother me, if you will.
So at that point, you were under the impression she wanted to go back to Pittsburgh. You wanted her to go.
At that point, I was under sort of that kind of impression. I was under the impression that she had made an agreement with a private investigator to go back to Pittsburgh and had taken the money that I had, well, given him to give to her and had reneged on that deal. That was my impression at this time, what was going on with her.
So after you had that conversation, a couple minutes pass, you guys go back inside the Olive Garden, and this transaction happens.
I'm going to have to talk to Zach. This is a little different from what I thought.
I get it. Well, alternatively, you could find some drugs, cars, something like that.
You offer up a different solution instead of getting her to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was based on a solution that Motaz had suggested earlier. It was to get her in some kind of trouble here in Houston.
And what was that plan?
To plant some narcotics in the back of her car or something like that. This again came from Motaz.
Why did you offer up this second option?
It was presented to me by Motaz as an option prior to this meeting because
Object not responsive.
Sustained. Ask the question again, please.
Why did you offer up a second option?
I'm not really sure why I offered up a second option. I think we were just having a discussion about, what could be done to stop her from testifying against me.
Throughout this conversation, if you can remember, were you of the impression that A, at this point in time, or Adam, the undercover officer, was listening to what you wanted?
I was starting to get the sense that he wasn't. He presented himself as if he does one or a couple of things, and that's all he does. When I suggested I don't want her hurt, I just want her to go, and he says that he doesn't really do that sort of thing. It made me feel.
Narrative not responsive.
Sustained.
Let's listen to this audio clip one more time.
I'm going to have to talk to Zach. This is a little different from what I thought. I get it.
What did you hear right now from the undercover officer?
That he had to talk to Zach. It's a little bit different from what he thought.
And prior to this, had you had a conversation with Adam? Not including what happened at Olive Garden, because this is still at Olive Garden.
No, this is the first time I had ever met this individual.
And a couple seconds later, this is said.
I think that you'd be able to go. I don't know.
it that you're requesting there?
I don't know how you're going to get her to do that, but just to get her to go
And by go, what do you mean?
back to Pittsburgh.
But prior to this, you had arranged other plans with Zach. Is that correct? Of what you wanted, other options that could happen?
I'm going to object to the foreman leading.
Can you rephrase that, please?
You mentioned earlier that you had other plans with Motaz. What were those plans again? If she wasn't going to go to Pittsburgh.
I'm going to object to ask and answering.
Sustained.
We'll listen to this audio clip.
I think you mentioned once about staging an accident.
That was supposed to happen in one of the PO hearings, I don't know. It didn't happen.
Was that accident supposed to kill Meghan?
No, he had suggested that that he would have one of his team members put some narcotics in the back of her car somehow, and that they would have like a, you know, at a stoplight, have like a fender, a little fender bender, bump cars, and that they would be forced to call the police, to get a report made. And he indicated to me he had a very good friend on the police force that would come and then all of a sudden decide to search the car, and that she would be, detained. Again, this was, Motaz's.
Those conversations we just listened to, that all happened outside of the Olive Garden. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess they did.
Do you recall who was all there outside the Olive Garden?
At that instant?
Yes, sir.
I think it was just me and Adam.
So now you guys go back inside, and this conversation happens. I know it's really hard to hear. I'm going to try and listen to it one more time.
Please.
Are you able to make out what they're saying?
You got to play it again. It's very, very. Something about it's going to be hard to sell, or I got the general gist.
Let's listen to that beginning part just one more time to see if we can't all hear it and listen to it. This is right after you came back from outside. What had you and Adam just discussed outside?
The options of getting her to move back to Pittsburgh, or alternatively, this fictitious.
And what was your position on how to handle the situation?
My position?
Yeah, and what was going to happen with Meghan?
Well, I would want her to go back to Pittsburgh, but as far as how it was handled, I left it up to them.
Would you characterize this conversation that we're going to listen to again one more time? Would you characterize that as Adam filling Zach in what they just talked about outside?
Yes.
And you left that conversation. What did you say constantly?
I didn't want anybody hurt or harmed.
And would that be hard for these two gentlemen to accomplish?
Well, it was all a setup, so I think it would be impossible for them to hurt or harm anybody because this was all an act. But as far as selling me this idea of solicitation of murdering somebody. It was going to be difficult for them to do that because my intent always was for no one to be hurt.
I'm going to object to narrative.
A couple of seconds after that hard-to-hear clip, I believe this one's also hard to hear. So just try and listen. I can't really hear that one either. We'll move on. This happens a couple minutes later, and there is foul language. Can you make out what you said there?
I can make out the word, the profanity, but
Let's try this one more time.
something about if she doesn't fucking leave something. I don't know. I can't really hear the remainder of it.
Well, why would you take an aggressive tone right there?
I think that there was, or I know in my mindset there was an issue with control here during all of this. I kept on telling them I didn't want anybody hurt, and they kept on going back to the theme of killing people. And
I don't object to narrative.
I think he's answering the question.
I felt a lot of pressure from them to sort of commit to this idea of killing people, and that was never my intent. And so I think that I took a much more aggressive tone with them about what I wanted to sort of say, hey, you know, you've been paid to do a job, and this is what I want you to do, and all this idea of killing and hurting people is not okay with me. And even with that tone that I took, the police officer continued to bring up
Judge, I'm going to object to narrative.
killing.
I'm going to object to narrative.
Now, the state has said this quote quite often, and I'm going to repeat from the transcripts. What you do say is, just put her in a fucking room, tell her if you don't fucking leave, I'm going to kill your parents. Did you want her parents dead?
No.
Were you asking them just to threaten people?
Essentially, yes.
Did you actually want any harm to come to anybody?
No.
Now, with this, you said you had a thing about control. You kept saying you didn't want people hurt, they wouldn't listen. What do you mean by fighting for that control?
I was very adamant about the fact that I didn't want anybody hurt or, you know, killed, and they continued to bring up this idea of killing, you know, people, and I became very frustrated. And so I sort of, if you will, proverbially was flexing my muscles saying, listen, I don't want that. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. You know, when you're telling somebody over and over again you want one thing to happen and they're being paid to do that, and they're continually bringing up something else that's just unfathomable to me, it's frustrating. So I think with the kind of personality I have, I was trying to be...
Would you say that you like people to like you?
Sure, who doesn't?
Would you try and impress people?
Absolutely.
At this point in time, what was your opinion of Adam and Zach?
Well, of Zach, I felt like he had been taking advantage of Valerie and I, and that...
Let me just stop you right there. What do you mean by, pardon me, taking advantage of y'all? How is he taking advantage?
I felt like we paid him for a job, and he'd arranged this stuff, and then it didn't work out the way he thought it would, and then he kept on promising that he he made promises to us over and over again. Those promises, he would give us a deadline and then it would shift backwards. And, you know, he said he had a bunch of other work he was doing and stuff at the same time on other jobs. And I felt like he kept on pushing back what he was supposed to do for us.
I'm going to stop you right there. What was your opinion of Adam at this point?
I was a little concerned that he was an animal, that all he wanted to do was kill people.
Why did you get that impression?
Because it's all he talked about. But then again, you know, Laura vouched for Zach, and Zach and I had become, we used to play pool and go out to eat.
Non-responsive narrative.
See,
Specific in your answer if you can be.
Yes, Judge.
and we'll move on. And after a while, the conversation progresses. Eventually it is said something along the lines of, the undercover says, it might come to have to kill her. And you respond with something along the lines of, if it comes to that, I'll do it myself. I don't have that clip brought out, unfortunately. But were you serious in going to go forward and kill her yourself?
No.
In fact, you offer up this plan instead, right? Are you able to make out what you offer up there?
An injection of potassium chloride.
So, would you have done that?
Absolutely not. I can tell you why. That's why I stopped.
Had the officers called you and said, hey, we have her, we need that injection, come on down, what would have happened?
They actually did do that.
Oh, well, for the hypothetical, what would have happened?
I wouldn't have come down there with anything.
So why'd you offer this up? Why'd you say, I know a way of doing this?
How do I answer this? I felt it was a way to still be in control of the outcome of the situation. I became concerned that Adam was one-minded in what he wanted to do. Because I trusted Zach, I, felt like Zach could sort of control the situation, but that at the end of the day, if it came down to it, I might have to control the situation and not allow them to hurt anybody.
And how would you have controlled that situation?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
And again, further into the conversation, after you guys have discussed killing her, you do say this. What did you just say?
You have to play it again. Can we escort her out of the city? Is that correct?
I believe it's state, but
State, yeah.
Why'd you offer that up now? You had already gone forward with the potassium chloride. Why do you want to now go to escorting her out of the state?
At the end of the day, I didn't want any harm to come to her. I just wanted her to leave and go to Pittsburgh. So I thought, well, maybe we could, or they could ensure that she left the state by, going with her to make sure she left.
Were you intimidated by Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a military trained guy. I was, under the impression that he was a Navy SEAL, and then I found out he was in interrogations and all this stuff. It's, he's not a big guy, but he testified here. He put on some weight when I met him. He was much more muscular. He also had a shaved head and a beard. He looked, he looked the part of a mercenary.
And the conversation progresses, something along the lines of, we can escort her, it's going to be hard.
I'm going to object to the leading.
Sustain.
And then this conversation happens. Are you able to make out what you say there?
Me?
Yes, sir.
I don't think that'll happen. I think she'll leave. Or I don't think that has to happen. I think she'll leave.
So you are still of the mindset that no harm has to come. Is that a fair assessment?
I was always of the mindset that no harm had to come.
Will happen.
That she'll go back to Pittsburgh.
After the Olive Garden conversation, you then go forward and have multiple conversations with Duran over the phone. We're going to now go to the second recording from March the 8th, 2017. In the interest of time, I will be skipping. I apologize. That conversation is the one right before the Olive Garden. We'll be going to the third one.
This is after the Olive Garden meeting.
This is after the Olive Garden, yes, sir. And I will be skipping ahead to about the minute 30 marker. And this is the conversation between you and Adam.
Yeah, I know. I can tell, obviously. Okay, I'll talk to Zach. At least you start. I'll need the $2,500 payment.
Just get it done and get the payment.
Okay.
Do you recall this conversation?
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember the background of this conversation? So I don't have to play the entire context. Or I can just fill you in if that's okay with the court.
Why don't you just give me a transcript? I can read through it quickly.
Or just summarize it.
I will summarize.
It's all right with the study.
This is right after Mac McDaniel had abducted Valerie McDaniel's daughter. She wouldn't give him back. And then you call the confidential informant to discuss what's going on. And then you tell them that statement we just heard. Okay, I'll talk to Zach at least. You start. I need the $2,500 payment. You respond, just get it done, you'll get the payment. At that point in time, what are you offering that payment for?
I'm not 100% sure what your question is regarding. May
I give him the transcript, Your Honor, real quick, just so he has a better understanding? May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Let's move from where we're at, but if you want to go back.
You want this back?
No, I got one.
Oh, okay. It's regarding whatever. Well, it's regarding what Valerie, I think Valerie and Adam had discussed as far as what should happen to Mac, but I'm not, I wasn't privy to their conversation. But I honestly don't remember exactly what the payment was for.
Did you and Valerie ever discuss what she wanted to have happen to Mac after the Olive Garden tape?
Vaguely.
Would you be surprised to know that she wanted her husband dead?
Not at this time. I've heard the tapes. she had spoken to me about her anger towards him and that desire earlier in time, but I was vehemently opposed to anything like that. And
why were you opposed to that? I mean, from the sound of these tapes we've listened to, you hated the guy too.
it still doesn't mean you take someone's life. He's also the father of their daughter, and due to my own personal circumstances of losing my father at a young age and growing up like that, I'd never wish it on anybody else.
In fact, your father died in front of you, didn't he?
I was home alone with him, yes.
I'm very sorry for that.
Thank you.
So, at this point in time, back to the conversation, and you offer that money. Do you fully know what Valerie wanted that plan to be, or were you in agreement with that plan?
Well, I couldn't be in agreement with something that I really didn't know what it was.
And you mentioned earlier that you thought you could potentially control the situation still. Were you still trying to control it?
I think I was always trying to control it.
And later on in that same conversation with the undercover officer, I'm going to be jumping ahead to about the 2-minute mark.
Okay.
So, it's not a problem, that's all.
Okay, sounds good. I'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah. As far as the bill goes, like I said, I don't want to hurt. It has to be the act first.
What are you saying there?
You said the 2-minute mark?
It's at 2:08 to 2:18.
Okay. Well,
Do you want to listen to it again?
no, I have it right here in front of me. I say I want her to go, and that, I prefer her not to be hurt.
In fact, you also say you prefer she just leaves. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're going to jump ahead now to the 4:40 mark.
Is this 4:40 to 5:07?
They'll be melted down into nothing.
Okay, hey, I didn't, that sounds great to me. I didn't get to ask Valerie at the time because there was too many people, but I guess I can ask you, is there, when we've done this in the past, people have requested messages, when we've requested certain action, some people want their target to get hit, shot 10 times in the head or something, personal reasons. Do you want something?
That's kind of freaky. What was your perception of that?
Well, I kind of stuttered. No, I don't. Again, I wasn't.
Non-responsive.
Had the subject of sending a message ever been approached before?
No.
So this was a completely out of the blue statement made by this undercover officer.
Yes.
And your response, we'll listen to.
Whenever you and Valerie discuss that, I don't want to be, whatever she asks you is fine with me. I just, she is what means that left so that you guys can talk.
Okay.
So you're saying that whatever she said is fine with you, that they discussed about. Was it okay with you?
It had to be. I wasn't privy to the conversation. Until I heard what they said on these tapes, I didn't know what had been said. And so, at the time, whatever she said was fine because I didn't know what she'd asked.
Now, At this point in time, did you ever think that this was realistically an option of what was going to happen?
An option? What option are you talking about?
About killing either Meghan or Mac McDaniel. Did you take this officer as serious?
No, I didn't.
Why didn't you?
Because I had repeatedly said that I didn't want anybody hurt. I didn't just specifically keep that to Meghan. You know, I had used the word anybody. I never wanted anybody physically harmed.
In fact, let's move on to the 6-minute marker. I believe it's about 6:06. Again, this conversations between you and the undercover officer.
Yeah, as far as my situation goes, I prefer that no one is hurt next quarter. I want my legal problems to go away. But, you know, I told you what.
That's clear.
You know what I'm talking about.
That's clear.
So you start off with saying, I prefer no one gets hurt. What did you mean by, but you know I told you what? You know what I'm talking about.
I don't remember exactly what I was referring to at the time.
Were you insinuating that he can kill her?
No, I mean,
Was that what you wanted?
absolutely not.
In fact, what did you say in that conversation?
I just want her to leave and my legal problems to go away.
And you prefer that no one gets hurt?
Yeah. And he wrote back to me, that's clear, Roger. Or, that's
Right.
clear, Roger, I understand.
Was the officer of the impression that you wanted nobody to get hurt?
I'm going to object. Speculation.
I can't talk about
I'm going
it.
to object to speculation.
Was the officer telling you that he understood?
Yes, he clearly says, that's clear, Roger, I understand.
Was it your impression that he understood?
I'm going to object to speculation.
I
It's
can't
relevant.
talk about it.
When she objects, we need
I
to stop.
apologize.
Sustain, ladies and gentlemen, give me about 2 minutes. We've got to check on something. I'll be right back.
And I was confused also. This is going to be coming from the 4th audio tape now. And would you like a transcript as well, just to read through real fast?
I would appreciate that, yes.
May I approach, Your Honor? Are you familiar with this conversation? Do you recall it?
Yes.
About the 1:58 marker.
Okay.
I'm going to play real quick.
And as far as my situation goes, the thing is, if my situation goes away, then his situation goes away. Well, besides, we don't even know what we're talking about. Kids are all waiting. That's well.
It's kind of convoluted, but you say, if my situation goes away, then this situation goes away as well. What are those situations?
What I was referring to was that if the assault, family violence, and the stalking charges were dropped, that Mac would not have a complaint about Valerie and I cohabitating when their daughter Natalie was around.
And how were you going to get those charges dropped?
I just wanted Meghan to go back to Pittsburgh so she just wouldn't be involved in testifying.
And was that your plan, to get to go back to Pittsburgh?
I'm going to object to ask and answer.
Sustain.
But so, the problems were linked. Would you clarify that just one more time for me? I apologize. How were the problems linked?
Mac's complaints to Valerie were about me being under, I guess, alleged to have committed the assault, family violence, and the stalking, and he was using those facts, even though I hadn't been convicted of either of them, that it was unsafe for his...
Non-responsive.
So Mac's complaint was a problem to you because of the alleged stalking and assault. And how were you going to fix that problem?
If the stalking and the alleged assault went away, Mac had no basis to complain about me and Valerie cohabitating.
I'm sorry, just one more time. How were you going to get those charges dismissed?
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Moving on to the next audio recording. I'm going to go ahead and give you a transcript for background. May I approach, Your Honor? At about the 155 marker of tape number 5, I will play it here in 1 second. I'm going to back it up a little bit just for clarity for the jury. I'm going to back it up to about 148.
Okay, I mean, I really prefer it to be 2 days from that payment, but that's fine. We can think of something.
So, what's happening here?
The undercover officer, or Adam, is pushing to get a payment.
What was that payment for?
It was part of the $10,000 that he and Valerie agreed for, whatever that time. My understanding was whatever they had agreed upon. But I think, indicated that we weren't going to give any more money at present until some stuff had been done. But he wanted money that day.
In your response to him, did you reveal that you knew what he was talking about?
No, I said that they had the conversation, that it was between her and him about what, there was no real indication about, let me look back here, hold on. It's between you and her. No, I don't reveal anything.
You just know that they planned to deal with the male subject that night.
That was their plan.
But did you know what that plan was?
No, I had no idea what the plan was.
And had you have known the plan was to go forward and kill him, would you have agreed to it?
Absolutely not.
Because you had a difference of opinion, correct?
Who had a difference of opinion?
You did.
With whom?
With Valerie.
We had discussions earlier in time when she was just livid, and she said, I want that explicit dead, and I had said...
Calls for hearsay.
You had a difference of opinion?
Yes, whenever it was impressed upon me that...
Now non-responsive.
You answered the question. Move on. We're moving on to recording number 6. This is going to be coming from March the 9th. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? That would make more sense.
You may.
On recording 6,
Yes. Yes, sorry.
are you good? About 20 seconds in,
I would rather talk in person. Now, okay. So I'm just gonna tell you then. The issue with the girl was a different deal. This is for the guy. And I have some good news for you guys with him. But I need something. You know, this is business. That was for a different thing, and I have nothing to do with that right now until I take care of the other problem. Anything you have.
so what's happening here?
He's asking for money there because it's business. And
Well, he reveals he has good news for you guys with him. What is he referring to?
well, at that point, he just said it revolving.
Is it fair to say he's talking about Mac?
The assumption can be made, yes.
And he has good news. What was your opinion of what that meant?
I really didn't have an opinion per se as far as what it meant is he just said we had good news. I had assumed at that point that maybe they had spoken to him or that he had agreed to leave us alone. He didn't seem like he was too aggressive in his conversation with me. He wasn't like, we got the SOB or anything. He just seemed like he had some good news.
Well, moving on to about the 207 marker. You have various conversations about meeting in person.
Me in person. Not on the phone, yeah.
I worry about being in person stuff because I worry about not being set to get stuck here too. But I trust you guys.
Why were you worried?
I don't know. I was wary. If I think back to it, I was wary about being in this guy's presence alone.
Why?
Because he scared me.
Why?
Judges has been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Will this be the first time that you've met without Zach there?
Yes.
And at this point, what was your perception of Adam?
Judge, again, objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Were you worried that maybe Adam might come after you at this point?
Objection leading and asked and answered.
When he started about talking about, I mean, this is business, this is business kind of stuff, and he was pushing and pushing for the money when we had already agreed that we would pay Zach, and then he would, take care of paying Adam, and now all of a sudden he's pushing to get the money himself, and he wants an in-person meeting. I was certainly becoming a little concerned about being, without Zach being present, if that's what you're asking.
That is what I'm asking. So the rest of this conversation is setting up the payment. What was your opinion of why you were paying him?
Well, I knew that he'd come up with a number with Valerie, and we had agreed to pay him, and he was very persistent about getting some money right then and there, and the full amount. But he had indicated that he had some expenses and that he needed some money. It was business, and so I was going to give him sort of an advance, if you will. Originally, the money was always supposed to transpire through Adam.
And at this point in the conversation, you didn't know what had happened to Mac.
No.
You didn't know what was supposed to happen to Mac.
No.
Let's go ahead and look at tape number 7. Tape number 7 is only really giving him directions and him getting to your house. Let's skip tape number 7. Let's go to tape number 8.
Is that, I only have a tape, hold on.
It'll say at the very top, recording the date.
Yeah, I
and
see
number
it.
8.
I don't have a tape number 8. I have a tape, it skips to 9, and then I have 9 through 12.
I'll give you 1 second to get your copy. About the 30-second marker, and this is the undercover officer on his way to your place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, copy.
There's one security here.
Copy that.
Alright, I don't want you to have to sign.
That.
Why were you worried about him signing anything?
So, when Zach first started coming to our apartment, he was playing, well, now I know he was playing the part of a, bless you, of a private investigator slash, ex-military intelligence guy. Well, I guess that is true. He was military intelligence, but he was always, I don't want to sign anything. Where are the video recording cameras, that kind of stuff. He's very secretive about, what he did. So I had assumed that Adam, being his, now I know his long-term friend and partner, probably had the same concerns. So I was just sort of affording him the same things that we had always afforded to Zach. Every time Zach came to our apartment, even when it was just for a friendly dinner, we...
So it was due to your relationship with Zach. You were helping out Adam, if you will.
It wasn't helping him. I just assumed he wanted the same things that Zach wanted, as far as not being just to sign in, which is why I agreed to meet him downstairs.
You weren't worried about any kind of trace back to you?
No, I mean, truth be told, there's the Willowwick's got security cameras everywhere.
Next question, please.
The next one is going to be from the Willowwick audio tape.
Is that number 9?
That is not number 9. It's going to be a different transcription. Unfortunately for that one, I do not have timestamps for it. But I do have splices of it that I'll be playing. I can give you a transcript.
That's fine.
One moment, Your Honor. We can just let the audio clips speak for themselves. I think this tape is a little bit better to understand than the Olive Garden one.
Okay.
So this is coming from March the 9th. About 14 minutes in, this conversation happens.
The male subject, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, he's gone, he's done. He's done.
Do you remember what you said there?
All right.
Let's just do it one more time. It sounds to me like you say already.
The male subject, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, he's gone, he's done. He's done.
Obviously, due to the quality, it's hard to understand.
I did say already.
Do you remember saying that?
I just heard it on that tape, but I mean, this is over a year ago. I can't remember exactly what I said.
Shortly after that, this is revealed.
Yeah, he was crying like a fucking bitch. But, you know, he's done, he's dead, he's gone. No more of that.
Now, why has your voice changed so much? It sounds like your voice has dropped quite a bit.
I think I was in a bit of shock as to what I was hearing.
He tells you that he's dead.
He does.
Why don't you offer up any kind of remorse or questions or anything?
I'm not really sure what to say. You know, I don't know how to answer that question.
Were you in shock?
It's shocking to hear that someone's dead. But again, you know, this guy's up there in the apartment with a gun, and I really didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
One second, Your Honor. And then right after you informed Mac has been taken care of, this happens.
I'll tell you right now, by tomorrow we can have her done too. Okay?
Okay, so you offer up, what are we doing with the girl? What does he tell you?
That her situation can be taken care of by tomorrow.
And what do you respond?
I don't want her hurt.
Let's listen to it one more time.
I think it's what I said.
I'll tell you right now, by tomorrow we can have her done too. Okay?
You don't have to hurt her. I don't want her hurt.
Why are you still saying that?
Well, he just told me he killed one person, and I think that I was still reeling from that. But, you know, I think it was obvious that he had a one-track mind about what he wanted to do with the whole situation. I was reiterating that that was not what my wishes were.
You're playing one last time. And let's listen to this, about 20 minutes in.
Okay, so there's something else we can do, which is where her body won't be found. But what are they going to do? If there's no body, how are they going to know anything? See, I'm trying to protect myself, too. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm trying to protect myself.
What did the officer just say?
He started off saying that, you know, if there's no body, there's no way to, he comes back, he's got to protect himself.
So, what'd you take that to mean?
That he was, you know, planning on killing her, I guess. If you're asking me what it sounds like he has a body, he's gotten rid of somebody.
Let's listen to it one more time.
Okay, so there's something else we can do, which is where her body won't be found. But what are they going to do? If there's no body, how are they going to know anything? See, I'm trying to protect myself, too. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm trying to protect myself. Okay.
So, you offer up that you don't want her to be hurt, she doesn't have to be hurt. And what does the officer do?
He's still talking about a body, and he's got to protect himself. So he wants to make a body disappear.
For what reason again?
To protect himself.
And this happens about a minute later. Well, actually, like 30 seconds later.
I'll do my best. I understand that you don't want her hurt. I know that. I understand. You made that very clear. I talked it over with our friend, but I told her the same thing that I told you. I know you don't want her hurt, but I cannot guarantee it 100%.
What's happening?
The undercover officer is continuing to escalate the situation where he understands I don't want anybody hurt, but he's telling me over and over again that he, you know, wants to hurt her, or that that's what he's got to do, and I keep on telling him that's not what I want. And repeatedly throughout this conversation, that's how it goes. I say I don't want him hurt. He says he understands, but then he says I may have to hurt her, and I say I don't want that, and he says, well, you know, I understand that, but I mean, this is a repeated theme throughout the narrative going back from the time I met him.
Let's listen to it one more time. He even says it's clear.
I'll do my best. I understand.
Asked and answered and leading.
You are leaving.
Yes, sir. I'll move on. About 25 minutes in, before he leaves, this is...
Can we approach?
So, about 25 minutes into the conversation at the apartment complex, this is stated. What did you hope to gain from saying that?
That he would understand that that's what I wanted, that there was nothing else I wanted besides that.
And then after that, the conversation progresses to this.
You know, there might be another option. I was thinking about this a little while ago. You know where her family is in Philadelphia, or what is it, Pittsburgh? You know where they're at, right? You have an address for them? What if I were to kill one of her family members and make her go back?
What's that about?
I mean, these are suggestions from him. I don't know if they are what they are and what he said. He suggested that what if I killed one of her family members and she had to go back? I mean, I don't think during this conversation suggested that he do that, but again, you know, he seems pretty intent on killing people.
Do you recall how you responded to that?
Just play it.
Red light on.
1 second.
You know, there might be another option. I was thinking about this a little while ago. You know where her family is in Philadelphia? What is it, Pittsburgh? You know where they're at, right? You have an address for them? What if I were to kill one of her family members and make her go back? I mean, this is what I'm thinking. There's always that option. She won't know if this is connected or not. I mean, it's pretty fucking far away from Texas. You know what I'm saying? And we show that you were never anywhere around.
Could you make out what you said there?
Something in terms of I really like her family.
Was that an option you considered?
Absolutely not. I really didn't want any harm to come to anybody at all. I mean, the idea of hurting anybody was...
Now, shortly after that, we go to here.
You know what? You're a good guy, man. You told me yesterday you were good. I believe it because you're thinking too much. You need to think this. Put this away.
He's close to the bottom of the worship of life. Why does it make sense? He said, consequences of the word. She already was told we don't once. She was told we Paul. This time you can do it together.
What did you mean by that?
Which part?
The very last sentence. Could you hear what you said?
Can you? Well, I was concentrating on when he was asking me if take one more.
Let's put the whole thing in context. What is happening here? What are they saying?
Just play it. He said, "I'm a good guy. I got to think with my start thinking with my head and not my heart." I think then when he asked me for another one, he asked to have another drink, and the last part you have to play again.
Let me stop right there too. You said he asked you for the drink. You guys were drinking?
Heavily, yes.
How much did you drink that night?
That particular evening, I don't know how long he was there, but I think he had 3 or 4 ciders, and we were smoking, and I had probably 2 or 3 mixed drinks.
Were you drinking before his arrival?
Took the day off. I think I had 1 drink at lunch, but yes, I mean, I had been drinking before he arrived, but I remember very specifically he and I together had several drinks over a short period of time.
Now, the last thing you said that we just listened to, I'll play it again for you. What did you say?
Back it up again. I'm sorry.
I don't know what's working.
Shouldn't this time we're gonna do what you gotta do.
If she doesn't leave this time, you got to do what you got to do.
Why'd you say that?
I don't know.
Well, what did you mean by it?
I think I meant that he'd have to, coerce her to go this time. That he'd have to make her go.
How was he going to make her go?
I don't know. I never gave him any suggestions. That was what he was sort of hired for.
And then about 29 minutes in, after more discussion,
More than likely, my tomorrow will more likely be there, and that's it. I understand you prefer not.
what's going on?
Again, he's continuing to push this issue of that she'll be dead, she'll be dead, she'll be dead. I want to, we're going to have to kill her. And I don't know what else to say. Every time he does that, I say, I prefer not. I don't want that. The undercover officer is pushing this issue over and over and over again. And every time I say, I don't want that, but he keeps on recircling back to it.
Did you believe him to be serious at this time?
Yeah, I took him that he was being serious. He didn't ever stop discussing killing people. He even suggested killing her family, which I, didn't want. This was a constant theme with him over and over again from the time I met him.
So why did you keep saying, I prefer no harm?
Because I wanted him to be clear that that's what I wanted, that I didn't want anybody to be hurt. I don't know how to say it any other way except for, at some point it was like, beating a dead horse. He kept on saying kill, and I kept on saying no.
Well, the rest of that conversation is this.
I understand you prefer not, and I can't give you 100% guarantee. As long as you know that, because I don't want you to think that I lie to you.
What do you say at the end there?
She'll listen. Before that, he reiterates himself that he understands I don't want anybody hurt. And he continues to say he can't guarantee that.
So you say she'll listen. What was Adam just trying to do? Or what was he saying to you?
He was saying that he understands that I don't want her hurt, but that he can't guarantee that and that he doesn't want to lie to me.
And so why do you say she'll listen? What was going through your head?
That she would go back to Pittsburgh.
So what were you wanting to accomplish by saying she'll listen?
For him to understand there was...
I object to asked and answered.
Sustained.
A few minutes later,
So you're gonna snatch her and you're gonna bring her something and talk to her.
It's the plan.
what's the plan?
that he was going to snatch her and bring her somewhere. It was a question I was asking him.
You were asking him. Let's listen to it one more time, if you don't mind.
So you're gonna snatch her and you're gonna bring her something and talk to her.
It's the plan.
What was he going to do once he brought her somewhere?
He was going to talk to her.
Was the plan to kill her?
No.
Was the plan to cause her harm?
No.
A ways down in the tape, you make this statement.
If you ever think yourself or your mom can use me, let me know.
I want to meet you, man. I'm happy here. She might need you.
Your mom?
By mom, you're referring to Golda Jacob, correct?
Yes,
And she did testify?
she did.
What were you meaning by she could probably use the services?
You know, I was just, his services would be, you know, sort of, I guess, intimidation and interrogation type stuff.
Why would Golda need him?
I don't know. I look back on that comment. It's kind of ludicrous that I'd said something like that.
So you weren't being serious?
No, I mean, no.
And then shortly after that,
I've done everything in my life to hurt. First, he would find her and ask her. What I couldn't do is myself because of the limitations.
what are you talking about?
I think I'm just, at this point, I'm being very, you know, I'm trying to equal his sort of bravado and whatnot. I mean, he was scaring me a lot, and I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's my proudest moment I've ever heard coming out of my mouth. I mean, I don't know what else to say to that.
Well, what do you mean by trying to match his vibrato?
The guy's sitting there talking about killing, and, you know, I'm sitting there listening to this, and, you know, we're drinking, and I'm, you know, I remember the conversation very well. If you listen to more of it, I'm clearly inebriated during most of this conversation, at the end part of it, and I was acting like an idiot. I don't know what else to say. You know, sometimes you do things when you've been drinking and it was an uncomfortable situation, and I don't know how else to say it.
Answer the question. Next question, please.
Yeah, moving on to about 44 minutes into the conversation.
My friends and I have done things in the last 10 years on quit one.
But it's easier for me. For me, it's easier. It's just a straight bullet to the head. Usually that's it. You probably have to do a lot more than I do.
You don't have an operation.
What is this all about?
I think it's, you know, again, me being, it doesn't even make sense what I'm saying. You know, I do operations, but he's talking about bullets to the head. It was me being foolish and bravado. I don't know how else to explain it. It sounds ridiculous now listening to it, you know, a year later. It's embarrassing, actually.
And a few minutes later,
You know, I've always been of the idea that, you know, doggy dog world, man. She's fucking you over. You gotta do what you gotta do to survive. That's what you said, right? Your survival is more important than hers, fuck. And that's the way we're trained. That's what's planted into our head.
First wasn't.
I understand that.
what's going on? What happened there?
Again, he's suggesting it's a dog-eat-dog world. You know, you got to do what you got to do. You got to take care of her. And I reiterate, I don't want her hurt. You know, he's pushing the issue of killing her.
And then shortly after,
I could use some of that stuff.
What? What do you need?
The injection, calcium.
Whatever you need.
You think I can do it myself?
Yeah, it's easy. You got injected in the groin.
In the groin, not in the heart.
Hell no. You can't have a needle mark.
why are you offering up and teaching?
I don't know. Again, you know, it's foolish talk, but you know, he was asking, you know, can I get some of that stuff? And you know, I was sort of telling him how you would do it if you wanted to. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. It was
the potassium chloride with you?
Absolutely not.
Where was it?
Theoretically, it could have been gotten from Valerie's clinic or the hospital. I mean, again, it's not my proudest moment to hear myself say something so absurd.
Were you planning on getting the potassium?
No.
Moving on to the ninth call, transcript number 9, audio tape 9. About 52 seconds in,
You need me? I need some help. Yeah. Did you? Well, yeah. I sent you something. And I sent you something. Did you receive? Yeah, we have a location. It's a house.
at that time, what did you receive?
It was a text message picture of Meghan duct taped around the mouth, and she had zip ties around her wrists, and she had zip ties, I think, around her ankles to a chair.
Were you surprised?
The response was shit. I think, yes, I was quite surprised.
How secure location that we have a connection with. We need your expertise. You said.
What's he referring to by expertise?
I inferred from the previous conversation that he was wanting me to come down there and, you know, inject her with potassium chloride.
And did you have access to it?
No, it's the middle of the night, and I wouldn't have done it anyway.
Okay. Do you want me to take care of her myself?
What does he mean by, do you want me to take care of her myself?
I can only infer that he means kill her.
And why? What did you respond?
Do you have to do that?
Why are you questioning him?
Because I don't want it to happen.
You should see how Meghan's acting. She's not very cooperative. If you can't show up with that stuff, I'm just gonna have to put a bullet in her myself.
What is his solution?
His solution is that he's going to have to kill her herself if I can't show up.
Was that your suggestion?
Absolutely not.
We're going to skip ahead, just for the time's sake, to about 2:40. Actually, about 2:23.
To what?
2:23.
Okay.
Yeah, she was. Now she can't do it anymore, but she was kicking and doing shit. If you want to show up, that's fine. If not, just let me know, and I'll have to kill her myself. I will. But I need an answer. Did you pay?
What does he tell you?
He tells me, yeah, she was, now she can't do it anymore, but she was kicking and doing shit. If you want to show up, that's fine. If not, just let me know. And if I have to kill her myself, I will, but I need an answer.
So he's asking for permission.
Yeah, he's asking for an answer. He's not really asking permission. He tells me what he's going to do to her.
And how do you respond?
Fuck. Well, I don't want her hurt. But if she's going to go to the cops, I mean, what if I think.
Why were you worried about the cops?
Well, he had brought it up earlier about, covering his bases and getting himself in trouble. But I think if you listen to the tape again, it's pretty obvious I'm under some distress about all of this.
And we're going to jump ahead, just for time's sake, to about 3:45.
Okay.
I mean, in so many words, it was just something in line that I don't give a fuck anymore at this point. I'm willing to do what I need to do to make sure that this motherfucker doesn't get away with what he's done. Now, the only, like I said, the only problem with her, she was kicking, she was screaming, she was fighting. Of course, she's crying, but, I mean, at this point, I'm getting to the point where I don't want to deal with this too much. If I put a bullet in her head and end her right now, I will. Unless you want to come down and inject her, or you want to come talk to her. Yeah. So you don't have access to that stuff right now?
No, I don't. I mean, it's too late. No, it's we actually talk to her.
I don't know if talking's going to do much help at this point.
Why do you offer to go down there and talk to her?
At that point, I think it's probably the only thing I can do to possibly try to save her life. He's become so adamant about that he's going to have to put a bullet in her head, that she's kicking and screaming, that she won't shut up.
Why were you so convinced he wanted to kill her?
Well, that's what he kept on saying he was going to do. At this point, after I saw that picture, I realized that this guy really didn't understand I didn't want anybody hurt. And he was his persona was going to do whatever he wanted to do, and he almost enjoyed this.
So you thought you could save her life by talking to her? How? What would you have done?
Sustain.
Do you think you would have been able to convince her to leave?
Objective speculation.
Sustain.
What did you want to have happen with Meghan?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustain.
Moving on to about moving on to about 6:50.
Is she awake now?
Yes. I don't have the means to put her to sleep unless I knock her out. Knock her out by force, of course.
Yeah, I'll do it again. I'll call you back in a few minutes.
Okay, call me back ASAP, please. Bye.
Why do you tell him not to do anything yet? What are you referring to?
Well, in general, just don't touch her again. And I needed a few minutes to collect my thoughts, so I was going to call him back.
Tape 10. About 10 seconds in, right after the introduction.
Did you try to talk to her at all about this weekend?
Man, I tried as much as I could.
What, you usually break up on yourself, like you get angry?
No.
So what are you approaching here again?
Again, I'm trying to get him to talk to her instead of hurting her. You know, I'm trying to get her to convince her, you know, to leave.
He has her bound and gagged, and you just want her just to leave still.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of ridiculous given the situation, but that's what I wanted all along. You know, but at this point,
Non-responsive.
And then about, well, continuing on.
Not really so much for me to go fuck myself, more of, you know, she's not gonna leave. She's, you know, no, you're not gonna get away with not me, but you're not gonna get away with what you've done. What you've done. Yes.
What are they referring to? That you've done.
the way that this played in my mind was that, you know, he's sitting there and telling her that I'm not going to get away with what I've done, the assault with violence, referring back to that, the stalking, and then now that I've done this to her, you know, he is trying to get my permission to just go ahead and say kill her, and I won't do that. But that's what's going on here. I mean, it's obvious from his voice and the way he's speaking.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, lunch is here. We're going to recess for lunch. Do not discuss the case. Stand in recess until you completed lunch. Stand.